Well, hey folks, I've just got news from Library of America. They sent me a message, and they are running a sale in the spring of for the spring of 2025. They call it their spring preview sale. You get an additional 20% off your entire order. But this is not an ad for Library of America. I'm just trying to make those of you who are fans of that series, I want you to know that this is out there and what their new titles are. So really this is more about new releases for the Library of America, and if these would be also on sale too if you choose to order them. So I'm going to start with Gary Snyder, Essential Prose. Gary Snyder is quite up there in age, I think. Isn't he in his 90s? This has an introduction by Kim Stanley Robinson, by the way. But he's best known as a poet, right? Comes out of the Beat generation and is very steeped in Eastern philosophy and religion, and also is closely tied to the land as an environmental poet from the West Coast. This is a book that gathers up his essential prose writings. He's known as the poet laureate of deep ecology, which is that kind of attempt to change our orientation as human beings to our environment. Instead of putting ourselves front and center, we recognize that other species, flora and fauna, have a right to exist as well, and we don't put ourselves up on a pedestal. So this spans his 70-year career and sounds his deepest themes, such as, quoting from the marketing copy now, how can we learn to tread lightly on the land we inhabit? What can ancient faiths and traditions teach us about living creatively and in community in the here and now? And this is a volume that's edited by, in collaboration with Gary Snyder, and also done by his friend and longtime editor Jack Shoemaker. So you've got essays, memoirs, poetic notebooks in here, lots of interesting stuff. So that is listing at $40, and with 20% off, it's available for $32. Next is John Quincy Adams, Speeches and Writings. New volume. By the way, the Gary Snyder is coming out in mid-March. The John Quincy Adams Speeches and Writing, I think, may be available now. It has actually arrived in the Library of America warehouse. This is retailing for $45, on sale for $32. So here's what they say about John Quincy Adams. For more than 50 years, in writings of remarkable breadth and insight, John Quincy Adams shaped the politics of young America, becoming its greatest champion and most penetrating critic. Despite a persistent interest in Adams' extraordinary life and career, there's never been a volume of his essential political writings. Here, for the first time, in an annotated edition, are the complete texts of 21 works by this far-sighted American statesman and consummate literary stylist. Opens with the year 1787, when Adams was 20 years old, with his Harvard commencement oration, urging Americans to turn toward the radiant sun of our Union, the lodestar of his political philosophy. It has newspaper writings, his 4th of July addresses, inaugural addresses, speeches, that kind of stuff. So lots here to chew on for fans of American history, political history especially. It's edited by David Waldstreicher, professor of history at the CUNY Graduate Center. Next up is Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism, Expanded edition. Now, what did they expand for this? Let's find out. These books are expected to arrive in the Library of America warehouse in early March. Hannah Arendt has been on the radar lately as I, scour Substacks and BookTube and other journalistic sources. She seems to be getting a lot of attention lately, and I think it has a lot to do with her book, this book in particular, The Origins of Totalitarianism. I wonder why people might be interested in totalitarianism these days. Anyway, here's what they say about this book. In 1951, a monumental book by a relatively unknown German Jewish emigre cast a spotlight on the terrifying new mode of political organization underlying the simultaneous emergence of Nazism and Stalinism. Herself a refugee from Nazi persecution, Hannah Arendt sought from her exile in New York City to answer the fundamental questions raised by the unprecedented atrocities in the Soviet Union and Axis-occupied Europe. How could there be such barbarism in the midst of civilization? How had totalitarian governments succeeded in exerting absolute control over millions of their citizens and in enlisting so many of them to commit mass violence? Arendt begins the origin of totalitarianism by exploring the historical conditions of these 20th century catastrophes. After a thorough examination of 19th century anti-Semitism in Europe and a trenchant account of the Dreyfus Affair in France, she turns to the rise of imperialism, describing how the racialized violence of Europe's colonial powers enacted a dress rehearsal for what was to come, laying the groundwork for totalitarianism's advent in the 1920s and 1930s. Among the most chilling features of that era's totalitarian regimes, Arendt argues, were their demands for unquestioning loyalty to the ruling party and their efforts to warp shared perceptions of reality. Exploiting the pervasive loneliness of modern life, she writes, these governments conducted elaborate programs of psychological manipulation that offered meaning and a sense of belonging predicated upon the victimization of others. Okay. This Library of America Expanded edition presents the complete text of the final authorized version of the book. As a special feature, it includes in an appendix 2 chapters dropped from earlier editions that reveal how the book evolved in the decades after first publication. The first, her original concluding remarks, shows Arendt engaging with the emerging concept of human rights in the immediate aftermath of World War II. The second offers an early assessment of the suppressed Hungarian Revolution of 1956, a case study in resistance under totalitarian rule. This first annotated edition of Arendt's masterpiece features concise and thorough notes on her many historical and cultural references, as well as a newly researched chronology of her remarkable life and career, co-edited by Jerome Cohn and Thomas Wilde. That is a good blurb copy selling that book. The fact that you get this, expanded edition of it, retails for $45, on sale for $32, expected to come in early March. Another new release expected actually in early February, so it might be in the warehouse by now, is Sarah Ruden, I Am the Arrow, The Life and Art of Sylvia Plath in 6 Poems. This lists for $22 and is on sale for $17.50. Here is the blurb copy. One of our leading interpretations of ancient literature, acclaimed translator Sarah Ruden, who has translated the Aeneid, has long had a passion for Sylvia Plath's poetry. In I Am the Arrow, The Life and Art of Sylvia Plath in 6 Poems, she offers a profound reconsideration of Plath's genius. Ruden argues that Plath is more than a consummate mythmaker. The poet herself takes on the role of the classical hero, striving, suffering, descending to an underworld that threatens meaninglessness and despair, and returning to speak the previously unspoken. For the first time, a writer and a woman becomes that hero. Now, this is really interesting how she's kind of going back to her classical roots and tying that to Sylvia Plath and seeing her as this hero. Interesting. I'll continue on. For Ruden, this achievement, like the deep learning and driving ambition that fueled it, has been overshadowed by the sensational and tragic details of Plath's life. That's what everyone knows about Sylvia Plath. The torturous marriage with Ted Hughes, her suicide, leaving these children behind. She dies at the age of 30 with so much promise. And, the confessional poet that's so many, especially women readers, like have found so meaningful to them. Anyway, Ruden offers a much-needed corrective through close readings of 6 poems: Mushrooms, You're, The Babysitters, The Applicant, Ariel, and Edge, that reveal how Plath persisted in the face of illness to produce works of disquieting beauty and uncanny power. Disquieting beauty is a nice way to describe Sylvia Plath's poetry. All right, so it's kind of a championing book about Sylvia Plath. And Sarah Ruden has translated not only Virgil's Aeneid, she's also translated Aristophanes' Lysistrata, Augustine's Confessions, and other works. And that's called I Am the Arrow, The Life and Art of Sylvia Plath in 6 Poems, expected this month, early February. And then we have another interesting new title. This is F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Annotated Great Gatsby, a richly illustrated, full-color, cloth-bound edition of The Great Gatsby with illuminating commentary by a preeminent Fitzgerald scholar. So now that The Great Gatsby is in the public domain, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of volumes like this. Like everyone's going to be publishing, maybe already is publishing The Great Gatsby. But how do you sell The Great Gatsby? Because pretty much everybody's already read it. Well, you add value to it. So let's see if this is worthwhile. Now, I guess this is already out. It's in bookstores by March 4th, but advanced copies have already sold out. So this is already a popular title for Library of America. It lists for $35. On sale, you can get it for $28. It will. New copies will be shipping tomorrow, Monday, February 10th. So I guess they've restocked it. Anyway, here's what they say. In this lavishly illustrated and annotated 100th anniversary edition, F. Scott Fitzgerald masterpiece comes to life once more, presented anew in the authoritative Library of America text established by acclaimed Fitzgerald scholar James L. W. West III. In this deluxe edition, West provides a lively running commentary on the novel, illuminating its many biographical contexts, literary allusions, and cultural references, encouraging readers to linger in the margins. Scores of illustrations and photographs vividly recreate the Jazz Age world of Fitzgerald's most famous work and chart its rich cultural afterlife. West also encapsulates the views of other writers and critics, quoting the very best of what has been thought and said about Fitzgerald's novel. Rounding out the volume are 13 letters, also annotated, between Fitzgerald and his editor at Scribner's, Maxwell Perkins, tracing the composition, editing, and publication of The Great Gatsby. Other special features include an introduction by novelist Amor Towles and a detailed chronology of Fitzgerald's life and career. So that's interesting. Yeah, okay, so the appeal here is you've already read The Great Gatsby. Now we're going to give you, more. We're going to give you more value. If you love to dig into footnotes and marginalia and, there's illustrations here. It's a cloth-bound edition. It sounds like a pretty cool book, actually. I would give this a look myself. Maybe when it pops into bookstores, I'll give it a look. But, it sounds interesting. Currently on sale for $28. Let's see. Is there a couple more? Actually, a couple more new releases to tell you about. One is Margaret Fuller collected writings, which includes Summer on the Lakes in 1843. Woman in the 19th Century, I think her most famous work, and essays, journalism, journals, and letters, and more. Books have arrived in the Library of America warehouse, so it's now available. It will be in bookstores on February 25th, 2025. retails for $45, on sale for $32. Let me tell you about Margaret Fuller. This is from the Library of America website. Transcendentalist, journalist, pioneering feminist, public intellectual, war correspondent, poet, Margaret Fuller's diverse and radical achievements in her short life are vividly captured in her brilliant and still surprising writings. This authoritative Library of America volume is the first new edition of her work in more than a generation and the most comprehensive ever published. So those are your two selling points. So what else do we have here? She's got some travel writing, which is a sketchbook of poems, meditations, and commentary about emerging national issues, which tackles issues like the status of women on the frontier to the despoliation of the natural environment and the plight of displaced American Indian tribes. Woman in the 19th Century is really a landmark in women's rights literature. It's being compared to Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And, it's a core text in feminist studies. They quote Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote about Margaret Fuller, saying, "Humanity can be divided into three classes: men, women, and Margaret Fuller." So you also get journalism, experimental fiction, reviews of writers like George Sand and Frederick Douglass. So anyone interested in 19th century American literature might want to check this one out. She also has letters to Emerson, Thoreau, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, among others. And Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer Megan Marshall has a textual essay describing the sources for the works, along with helpful notes. Edited also by Bridget Bailey and Noelle A. Baker. So that is Margaret Fuller coming this month. And finally, last but not least, this is a interesting paperback anthology, The Black Fantastic, 20 Afrofuturist Stories, edited by Andre M. Carrington. Books have arrived in the warehouse at Library of America. It should be in bookstores already. It says it's in bookstores February 4th, 2025. So if you've seen this out in your local bookstore, let us know. But here's what this is all about. Inspired by Afrofuturist pioneers like Octavia E. Butler, whom I read a book by her last fall called Parable of the Sower. Terrific book. And Samuel R. Delaney. A new generation of black writers is fashioning a renaissance in speculative fiction. Edited and introduced by sci-fi expert Andre M. Carrington, The Black Fantastic brings together Hugo, Locust, Nebula, Bram Stoker, Tiptree / otherwise, and World Fantasy Award winners with emerging voices to showcase the watershed moment in American literature. Here are 20 beguiling, unsettling, and visionary stories spanning the cosmos and a dazzling array of alternate timelines. Just to give you a little taste for what some of these stories are about. Fenderson, G. Clark, and Alea Dawn Johnson stare down the specters of history in their haunting fictions set respectively on a founding father's brutal plantation and in the vampire-built internment camps of a dystopian Hawaii. Violet Allen's would-be superhero stories turn to searing metafiction when her main character is repeatedly shot and killed by the police. Nana Kwame Adje Brenya and Rion Amilcar Scott explore otherworldly forces at play in a small-town barbershop and in a young writer's ambitions, while Victor Lavalle tells the story of a man living on the streets of New York City, his bag of deposit bottles and cans bearing urgent messages from another dimension. Other stories are by turns comic, provocative, and terrifying. Thaddeus Howells delivers a crowd-pleasing tall tale about a battle with aliens over the fate of Earth by way of an epic baseball game. Maurice Broaddus spins a coming-of-age fantasy about an American girl in a utopian future Africa. Craig Lawrence Gidney offers a Lovecraftian tour of the ballroom drag scene. Tara Campbell weaves a spell of eco-feminist horror, and much more. Really cool. This sounds very interesting book. I like the cover art too. So that's the Black Fantastic 20 Afrofuturist stories out already. Lists for $24.95. Oh, you can get it on sale at the spring sale night for $19.95 from Library of America. So anyway, that I think is all the new stuff that's out from Library of America or coming soon. And let me know in the comments if you're interested in any of these titles. If you're fans of Library of America, I want to talk about Library of America more on the channel soon, but that will kind of give you the update for the time being. I'll throw links in the show description if you want to explore their catalog in more detail. Again, they're not a sponsor. I'm just kind of an enthusiastic reader of many of their volumes. They do good work, Library of America. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you're reading some great books.